Are you called to vocational ministry? 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 says, this is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. What's up, YouTube family? Pastor Gerald here with the Pastor's Cave. I am recording once again at Gum Branch Baptist Church. I am just sitting in some different locations, trying to find a place that's quiet around here because there are some other staff and stuff here. So I am in our choir room right now, which is behind our sanctuary. So this is part 2 of Are You Called to Ministry? Now, I want to say this. These videos are not designed. I'm not trying to determine your call to ministry. What I am doing is answering, this is the question that I had to answer for myself beginning about 20 years ago. And so we're just going to, in these videos, walk through the process of how I got to where I am today. So the first video, we talked about how it all started. If you haven't watched the first video, I want to encourage you to go back and to watch that, because it'll give you a little bit of context with this, and I think it'll help to see how in my life the hand of the Lord was at work. So in this video, I want to talk about when I began to sense the call. So again, I go to my home church somewhere probably late 2001, early 2002, somewhere in 2002, I become active in ministry there. And, as the unofficial youth pastor, and of course, about 2 years before I left there in 2006. So let me back up. So in 2005, I was asked to be a deacon. And of course, a deacon and a pastor are not the same roles and responsibilities in the Bible. Some churches operate that way, but really the God-ordained responsibilities are not the same. Now, a lot of the qualifications are the same, but not the actual calling, what you do. And so in 2005, I was asked to serve as a deacon, and I declined it. I just did not feel that I was, ready to serve in that capacity. Part of it is I just didn't feel worthy, and that's something where God had to work in my heart and help me to understand, no, you're not worthy. I didn't call you because you're worthy. I want you to serve in this ministry because, it's my calling for you, right? You'll never, if you wait till, in other words, if you wait till you're worthy to serve, you'll never serve. And so, but I declined it, but I really did pray about it. And I thought, I just prayed about it and said, you know what, if the Lord wants me to do this, I'll do it. But at that point in time, the only thing I was doing, I was serving as the unofficial youth pastor, and I was teaching some Sunday school, but I'd never been in front of a big crowd. Like, I wouldn't even teach a Wednesday night Bible study. In fact, my pastor asked me one time, he was going to be out, hey, would you do the Wednesday night Bible study? I was like, no, man, I can't do that. I can't do that. So if you don't know my backstory, and I hadn't shared it on this channel, I was the kind of guy that would take a 0 instead of get up in front of the class and recite a poem from memory or do a book report. Like, I never like to be in front of crowds of people. So yeah, the Lord worked through that. So anyway, in 2006, I was asked again to serve as a deacon. And by that time, I think God was really already stirring in my heart about the call to vocational ministry. And honestly, I think that's part of the reason that I agreed to be a deacon. And so I was elected as a deacon and ordained in November of 2006. But by the time I got ordained as a deacon, I sensed a call to ministry. And so here's the deal. Once I began to sense a call to like pastoral ministry, I ran from it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. If you watch the first video, I told you I had began going to church where my father-in-law served as pastor. And I had seen how vicious sometimes a pastor could be treated. I'd seen it there. I'd seen it in my home church with my pastor. I had been on trips and stuff with pastors, and just to hear them talk about it, even in our local community, I'd seen where a guy would come in as a pastor of a church. He'd be there 2 or 3 years. They'd run him off, right? I had seen not all, but I'd seen a lot of the bad and nasty side of ministry. And I just thought, man, I don't want to have nothing to do with that. So when I was asked to be a deacon in 2006 and eventually ordained in November of 2006, I think part of the reason I did that, in my mind at least, was, if I'll do this, Lord, but I'm not going to be a pastor. Okay, that's kind of where my head was at. And, I was just set on that. Like, I am not going to be a pastor. Well, also something else happened around 2006. They needed a teacher for a children's class at church. It was, I don't know if it was K through 2. I think it was a K through 2 class. And I love kids. And so I was like, I went to the Sunday school director and I told him, I said, hey, man, I'll teach that class. And he said, no. He said, we don't need you to teach that class. And I was like, well, I thought you needed a teacher. He said, we do. He said, but we need a teacher for our senior adult men's class. He said, and basically what he was saying is, with your understanding of the Word of God, and again, this is what he was saying. I'm not saying this. He said, I don't want to put you in there with elementary children. I need you to go to this class where these senior adult men are. I got to have somebody in there that's solid, is what he was getting at. Well, I didn't really want to go in there. I was like, man, I don't want to do that. But the deal is, I had been praying, God, what do you want me to do? And so that door opened up and I went in there, and in that class, you got guys in there that taught Sunday school for 40 years. You got retired pastors in that class. And man, I'm so intimidated, right? I'm thinking, but here's the deal. I took the class and I taught it for probably close to 2 years. And here's what happened. God used that class. I didn't really benefit those guys. I mean, I was in there telling them stuff they already knew. Those guys benefited me. And so again, it's just another step in this process. You go from just attending church to all of a sudden a little bit involved in youth ministry, all in youth ministry, learning to serve as a deacon, serve the church, because we're all servants first, right? Whoever wants to be greatest will be servant of all. That's what Jesus says. So now I'm in here with these senior adult men, and I'm having to study because I'm thinking, man, they're going to eat me alive. And what I found is there were some things that maybe I didn't get exactly right. And so I had this one dear brother in there that he would, in fact, I had, I don't want to tell that story. He would say, well, Brother Gerald, do you think maybe it's because the Medes and the Persians were doing this or that, and that's why that happened? And I'm like, yeah, brother, that's what I believe. It was like he was guiding me, but he wasn't embarrassing me. He was helping me, right? And so I learned a lot in my time in there. And I never could get rid of this sense that God wanted me to do more. And there's really 2 reasons why I battled against it. Number one is I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be a pastor. I didn't want to get treated the way that I'd seen other guys get treated. I just didn't want to do it. I just didn't, That's the honest truth. Number 2 is this. I was afraid that if I shared with anybody that I felt like God was calling me to ministry, that they would fall down in the floor and start laughing. Now, y'all think I'm playing, but I am dead serious. I was like, because I hadn't been in church. At that time, I'd probably been in church when I started sensing this call. I'd only been in church about 6 years. I didn't come from a church background. I was a hellion before I got saved. It's wild, right? The city I grew up in, once I become a pastor, there was a lady sent me a message on Facebook, and this is all it said. I need to go back and see if I can find it. It says, Gerald Greenlee, a pastor. I guess God really does change people. So that's my background, right? I'm just sinful. To the extreme. And I'm thinking, man, if I go tell somebody I think God's calling me to be a pastor, they are going to laugh in my face. But the call, I literally got to where I couldn't sleep at night. It was consuming me. And I thought, man, I got to have some relief. And so I went to my father-in-law and I said, hey, I need to talk to you, because he was a pastor. And I thought, he'll understand. And he loved me. And I knew that he might laugh at me, but he would try to help me. And so I went over and I said, man, I need to talk to you about something. And I said, I don't even know how to say it. It took me so long to say it, he probably thought I was fixing to divorce his daughter or something. Because I'm trying to, I just can't. And I finally just said, man, I think God's calling me into the ministry. And he was like, yeah, I think he is too. And I'm like, what? He was in total agreement. He said, man, I can see God's hand at work in your life. He said, there's just been something. I've just felt like that God was going to call you to be a pastor. And I'm like, really? Yeah. So I felt so much better. And I said, well, don't tell nobody. And I just kind of thought on it for a while. And I didn't immediately even tell my wife. So after I talked to my father-in-law, I continued to kind of wrestle with it. And I thought, well, I don't know, man. And then I thought, you know what? I need to tell my wife. And so I sat down with her one night, same thing. I was like, I need to tell you something. I said, I don't know how to say it. She probably thought I was running around or something, She didn't think that, but spit it out, dude. What are you trying to tell me? And I said, I believe God's calling me to be a pastor. And she said, well, I knew this day would come. I'm like, what? Dude, I feel I can, hair stands up even just saying that now, all these years later. She said, yeah. She said, I knew the day would come. And I'm like, so now I'm at the point, because remember, there's two reasons. There's two reasons I didn't want to go into ministry. One, I just didn't want to do it. And two is I thought people would think I were crazy if I told them I believed God was calling me. So there's a part of me that's hoping these people will laugh at me and say, you are off your rocker. And they would say it in South Georgia terms, ain't no way God called you, right? And so I was like, man, She said, yeah, I can just tell, baby. I can just tell. And I'm like, you serious? And so a little bit more time rocked on. I said, I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to go talk to my pastor, because if I were to go into ministry, he'd have to be the one to ordain me. If he won't ordain me, I can't go into ministry, right? So, I'm seriously still battling this. And so I called my pastor. I said, hey, man, can I stop by and see you sometime? Yeah. So we worked out a time, and I went by his house. And by then, it had become a little bit easier, I guess, probably to tell somebody. I said, Brother Tommy, I said, man, I'm struggling. And I said, I don't see any way God would call me to do this, but I believe that God's calling me into ministry. He said, Brother Gerald, he said, you remember about 6 months ago when we were at the Youth Evangelism Conference down in, I think it was Orlando that year? I said, yeah. He said, you remember one of the young guys got sick? I said, yeah. And my pastor had previously been like a paramedic. He was in the medical kind of field. And so our pastor kind of took care of this one sick student that we had so we could go to the conference with all done. He said, I intended to talk to you that weekend. He said, but when Blake got sick, he said, I just didn't have an opportunity where you and I could talk one-on-one. He said, but I was going to tell you then, while we were down there, that I really believed God was calling you into ministry. And I thought, that's strike 3. Now, some people would view that as hit number 3, but for me, it was like a strike number 3. And I said, okay. Now the question becomes, what did I do? How did I respond? Well, you're going to have to wait till the next video. But I probably didn't respond exactly the way that you might think I would have. So stay tuned. Next video coming out, part 3 of this series, Are You Called to Ministry? Hey, appreciate you taking the time to watch today. And my prayer for you is always the same, that the Lord might richly bless you and that you might see all of your blessings as from Him.